Hey, what's up, everybody? This is going to be a retrospective of Eminem's full catalog discography. I figured now would be a good time to do it because Music to Be Murdered by Eminem's latest album is still pretty fresh in our minds. It came out at the beginning of 2020 before all this craziness went down in the world. But yeah, Eminem has had a very interesting catalog. I would say it's a classic catalog, but it's not in contention for one of the best in hip hop history. It's definitely been an inconsistent catalog in terms of quality of hip hop music. But, Eminem has really been in a tough spot, because he appeals to so many different people, so many different races, so many different genders, so many different age groups. I mean, how many people have you met that, aren't even fans of rap music? That like Eminem, and we'll talk more about that later because I've met a lot of people that don't even like rap but love Eminem. But Eminem's always been kind of hit or miss for me, to be honest with you. But I've grown to really love him and respect him the last couple of years since the whole revival fiasco. But you know, when I was in high school, he was the man. With the Chronic 2001 album, really kind of propelled him to, elite status. And yeah, so he dropped a lot of great albums at the beginning of the 2000s. And then, he just had his ups and downs. He released a lot of weird albums. He made a lot of mistakes and, had drug problems and, just a whole bunch of ups and downs in his catalog. And, but yeah, man, I've grown to really respect him. He's been through a lot, and he's proved to me that he definitely has the heart of an assassin. I think he's probably the thing that I think hurts Eminem the most is he needs to be like angry and like he needs to be fueled, like when he's laid back and he's rich and successful. It's he ran into a major problem, and you saw how he responded to all the criticism. I've never seen anybody take that amount of criticism and come back from it the way he did. So yeah, I've grown to really respect him. But let's just get down to his whole catalog right here. Sorry. So the first album I'm going to talk about is Infinite. I'm not going to forget Infinite this time. A lot of people called me out on it when I did the Eminem Worst to Best Albums video. But, the reason I skipped Infinite is, I was, I used to go to the record store all the time back in 1996. And, I remember when you look up Infinite, it says November 12th, 1996 release date, which would make it release the same day Snoop released The Dogfather, the follow-up to one of the most successful debut album in hip hop history, Doggy Style. So, yeah, I remember going to buy The Dogfather, and was Eminem's Infinite even on the shelf at the time? Like you didn't hear anything about it. It didn't get any exposure in the source. You didn't see any videos released. So it's kind of tough to classify Infinite as a major studio album, but when most people digged up Eminem's discography, they saw that Infinite was a, official release. So most people do count it. From what I know about it is they only did like 1,000 copies of it, and it was mostly like on cassette tape. So yeah, I don't think Infinite was ever got an official release. I tried to get a physical copy of it at my local record store. They couldn't even, get it from Amazon. So it's pretty rare in terms of the actual physical release of it. You could actually download it on DatPiff for free if you want to hear it. But yeah, Eminem on the Infinite album, I would say this. I personally, I really like the album. I think it's really my type of hip hop. It's like laid back, but it's jazzy. It's got that 1995, 1996, New York hip hop type of feel to it. Eminem sounds a lot, it doesn't sound like Nas, but he sounds like Nas's friend AZ. AZ's was the only guest appearance on Illmatic on Life's a Bitch, where he had one of the best guest verses in hip hop history, maybe the best guest verse. Eminem really sounded a lot like AZ. He didn't sound very hungry. He sounded kind of laid back, but he still sounded good though. He still sounded lyrical. He wasn't as raunchy, definitely wasn't as controversial, but you could definitely tell the talent was there. But I think he needed to develop more of an edge as far as personalities. Needed to develop, more of an original style. It just didn't seem that original though, and that's the other thing. It just Infinite. It was a dope album, but it didn't seem like what you saw in 8 Mile, like this guy that is like the Rocky of rap music, where he's hungry as hell and his life is on the line. If this album doesn't deliver, like his life is over. Like it didn't have that feel to me. Like it didn't have that sense of urgency. It's just a cool, laid back album to check out. There's really not much to say about it. It doesn't have any of Eminem's best songs on it, I would say, but it's a cool listen. Like it doesn't annoy you the way some of Eminem's later albums would annoy you, if that makes any sense. And the album kind of had a feel to me like, the D12 guys, Proof, had a lot to do with it. There was like a lot of radio spots on it. But yeah, Infinite is definitely a dope album. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's just laid back, and it's just a nice little appetizer, like right before the Slim Shady LP. Okay, so now we move on to the Slim Shady LP, released February 23rd, 1999 on Dr. Dre's new label, Aftermath Records. And yeah, the first time most people heard of Eminem, and I used to read The Source all the time, but the unsigned hype column in The Source, most of the rappers didn't really make it, but that's the first time where Eminem got a major article written about him. It was in 1998, the unsigned hype column. And Eminem didn't really look the way he did during the Slim Shady LP. You could tell he really worked on his look. He was, if you look at Eminem in the late 90s before he signed with Dre, he was a little bit out of shape. Like he wasn't really he didn't have the blonde hair. He just looked like kind of a generic out of shape rapper. I believe, obviously he started battling. You saw in the movie 8 Mile, he was more of a battle rapper. He won all these battle contests in Detroit. And then he did the Slim Shady EP. And then apparently Dr. Dre heard him. Someone gave him a tape. So that's this is the fascinating thing about Dre, and this is why the combination works so well. Is Dr. Dre is obviously he was a big star at the time. He's the biggest producer in hip hop history. This guy worked with Snoop, Tupac, Ice Cube, all these guys. But Dre, thank God that he loves to create new stars. He doesn't like dealing with egos. So the good side effect of that is he's willing to work with guys that are hungry and guys want to make a name for themselves. And there you go with Eminem. Eminem has always been a big fan of Dre and big fan of hip hop just in general. So it was just a match made in heaven there. So when Dre heard him on the tape, he didn't think he was white. That didn't even cross his mind. So when he found that he was white, he was really surprised. But Dre didn't hold that against him. And Dre was smart enough to realize that if you market Eminem the right way, this guy could attract a lot of different fan bases, not just from the hip hop scene. And so I remember Dre did tell Eminem to kind of change his look, kind of try to tighten up. And I don't know why, but Eminem bleached his hair blonde. And at the time, it worked. It was original. And a lot of people started dyeing their hair blonde after Eminem finally started releasing videos. So the first, when the Slim Shady LP came out, February 23rd, 1999, I totally skipped it. It didn't really get my attention. I remember my brother was singing the song because they used to play it on MTV. It was a song called "My Name Is," and it was at the time it was funny, but I didn't really. I don't think a lot of the rap fans, like the fans who are really into hardcore rap, they didn't really take Eminem that serious after the song. It was more of a comedy thing. But when you look back on it, yeah, he had some great lines. But I heard a lot of people kind of compare him to Vanilla Ice. He was the Vanilla Ice wannabe. You heard that all the time. But yeah, you know, the song "My Name" is definitely got a lot of attention, especially with kids and high school kids. Um, but you know, the Slim Shady LP, a lot of these songs were already done on the EP. You know, this was just a nice little, I would say, introduction appetizer to kind of, you know, build Eminem as a star heading into the Chronic 2001, and it was very smart by Dre. You know, the Chronic 2001 was really the platform that was gonna, you know, take Eminem to the next level. But you know, Slim Shady LP, it sold very well, and I think a lot of people started taking Eminem serious after the song with Dr. Dre came out called "Guilty Conscience," where it was just a great story with two guys just totally, you know, arguing with each other back and forth. It was a great concept, and I didn't even think about it till my brother told me, like, hey, this is great, because Dre was associated with, you know, the biggest names in hip hop history. Ice Cube, you know, Snoop, and Tupac, and when you see him with Eminem, it kind of lets the world know, okay, this is Dre's next guy. This is his next rapper. He needed a new rapper, and this is him. And he's white, and he's good, and he's great. And I think, you know, My Name is, a lot of people, you know, got a lot of people's attention, but I don't think anyone started really paying attention to Eminem until Guilty Conscience. And then Dre did another great song, Role Model, that was a single. So Dre really, you know, gave Eminem the three singles from the Slim Shady LP. A lot of the other songs, you know, they were pretty much done. I think maybe even before Eminem signed with Dre. But, you know, the Slim Shady LP was definitely a dope album. It was definitely a step up from Infinite in terms of character development, impersonations, storytelling. You know, the beats are all right. You know, I still think Eminem had a ways to go in terms of his delivery, though. I think his delivery would get a lot better as time went on. But yeah, Slim Shady LP, you know, when it first came out, you know, I didn't even buy it when it first came out. My brother actually bought it, so I just listened to it from him. But yeah, man, there's a lot of depressing songs. There's songs like "If I Had" and "Rock Bottom," where you could really feel his pain about how much it sucked to be broke and poor. And there's other stories about drug use, stories about women. The song with Royce da 5'9", where, you know, him and Royce became the Bad Meets Evil duo. That was a great song. And the Dr. Dre songs really feel a step up from the in terms of production from everything else in the album. And you even have, you know, one of the most controversial songs ever about his wife, and the trunk of the car, well, Bonnie and Clyde '97. So yeah, a lot of this stuff was done before 1999, but you know, it was just a nice little, you know, debut album from Eminem. You know, before Chronic 2001, but you know, to me, like it really kind of, it was definitely a nice little prelude for the Marshall Mathers LP. Okay, so this brings us to the Marshall Mathers LP. I would say this is probably Eminem's most anticipated album ever. He finally had some expectations here. There was just a lot of hype for this album. I mean, this album everybody was playing this album. East Coast, West Coast, kids, adults, people in the street, you know, people in the suburbs. I remember I was even out in California during the summer of 2000. Like, everybody was playing this. So yeah, like I said, man, May 23rd, 2000, when this came out, this just had so much buzz, and it was very similar to when Doggy Style came out. You know, I think what Snoop did for the Chronic was exactly what Eminem did for Chronic 2001. When you look back at the Chronic, you know, Snoop was definitely the star. It set the stage for his album. And, Eminem didn't have a major role on Chronic 2001. He was only in 2 songs, but it was, 2 of the best tracks of the whole album. Eminem might have had the 2 best verses on Chronic 2001. But both songs were major singles. Really, the guy that really was supposed to, be the Snoop of the Chronic 2001 album was actually a rapper named Hitman. If you listen to every single track that on Chronic 2001 that wasn't a hit, wasn't a single, featured Hitman on it. But when the Chronic 2001 blew up, Dr. Dre was in such high demand. Eminem was, gaining so much popularity that Hitman just kind of got lost in the shuffle, and Dre never really had the time to work on his album. But even though Eminem was only on 2 tracks on the 2001 Chronic album, it's I would say it pretty much did exactly what the Chronic did for Snoop. It just the expectations just grew. This time you had Dre working on the whole album with Melman. Melman deserves a lot of credit too, but Dre would actually tweak a lot of the tracks. And Marshall Mathers LP, I would tell you Eminem's delivery got even better. Dre, he's not only a great producer, he's great at working with the artists. He gets the best out of all his artists. You listen to Snoop and Tupac on Dre tracks, you could tell their delivery and execution is always a lot sharper. I feel like Eminem's delivery was at his best on Marshall Mathers LP. He just sounded great. A very controversial album. Dre really likes to, he made Snoop out to be this gangster, how he was tough, and Snoop had all these raunchy lyrics. So, and he kind of did the same thing for Eminem. Not, the gangster rap was kind of on the way out at that time, but Eminem was still, very controversial in terms of his, relationships with his mother, relationships with his wife. There was actually a lot of anti-gay stuff on the Marshall Mathers LP. So a lot of these tracks, it's like, I don't even know if this album would even be allowed to come out today, especially that song Kim. Probably the most disturbing and violent rap song ever. But Eminem was so untouchable at that time. Like even on some of the hooks, like Eminem, he still sounded great. So like I said, I thought when Marshall Mathers LP first came out, I would say that a lot of people didn't really hail it as a classic, and I kind of figure why. Like, it wasn't as good as Doggy Style. It wasn't as good as like the Chronic in terms of beats. Even Chronic 2001, I felt like the production was a step up. But still, like Eminem, really carried the album. Like he's the star of the show. Just the way he was flowing on there. Just everything, battling the Backstreet Boys, the boy bands, and the Britney Spears, all those pop singers was really popular at the time. So it was entertaining to see him go at them. But you also saw the frustrations that he was dealing with in terms of fame. Like even though he was broke and he was poor on Slim Shady LP, you could see the transition to being famous was kind of, he really wasn't sitting well with it either. How do I think of success? It sucks. That's one of the most famous rhymes from the album. So definitely Marshall Mathers LP, to me, this is still Eminem's best album, and a lot of people, tell him, go back and study that album, but it's just very difficult. Making music is not an easy thing to do, and you can't just snap your finger and try to recreate the past. But Marshall Mathers LP, I think it's a classic. It became a classic over time. It only got 4 mics in the source at first, but like I said, the production. It wasn't as mind-blowing as some of the other stuff that Dre worked on. So I think that might have been the thing that was holding it back. Plus, Eminem being white still at the time, I felt like a lot of the hip-hop aficionados, media, the journalists, they still hadn't openly embraced him yet as much as they would in the coming years. But yeah, Marshall Mathers LP, definitely a classic in my book, and still my favorite Eminem album, without a doubt. All right, so next up we have the Eminem Show. This came out Memorial Day weekend in 2002, May 2002. And yeah, it was another great album from Eminem. So basically, I think a lot of people feel like Eminem released 3 really quality albums. I wouldn't say they were all classics, but the Eminem Show was fantastic. It was definitely a great follow up to the Marshall Mathers LP. I would say that. For the fans of Eminem that aren't really hip hop purists, I think most of them would look at the Eminem Show as Eminem's, crowning achievement. And, you could definitely sense a lot of growth and maturity, with the Eminem Show. One of the things I remember about this album is, he was finally really getting a lot of respect from, the hip hop community. I remember Nas actually said during the Jay-Z battle that he thought Eminem, destroyed Jay-Z on the Renegade song. It's just Eminem just sounded a lot better on that track. So that's why Nas said that. That was a big, the saying was it made Eminem look all good in the hood after Nas gave him that compliment. And I believe Chris Rock said that Eminem was the best rapper in the world around the time Eminem Show came out. But in this album right here, Eminem started producing a lot of his tracks. He learned a lot of stuff from Dre. You could definitely tell it was very influenced by Dr. Dre in terms of the drum beats and the drum programming and things of that nature. But Eminem did have a lot of help with this. Dre did a couple tracks, didn't do much, but album was very political. This happened. This was, you could just tell, recorded right after 9/11. So you heard a lot of lines about Anthrax, Bin Laden, the draft, the Square Dance song. A lot of stuff about Bush and his decision making, President Bush at the time. There was a track called White America. This definitely appealed. It was more, I would say, out of all of Eminem's albums to this point, this was more so appealing to the white fan base than any of his other albums, and a lot of it had to do with a lot of there was some rock influence too. You heard a lot of songs that didn't sound like traditional hip hop songs, particularly this song about Haley. There was a Aerosmith sample as well. But you could tell like he started to change his style a little bit. You heard a little bit of the screaming and yelling Eminem Until I Collapse, with that ended up being one of his biggest hits. It just gives you that adrenaline rush. It's one of those songs that you constantly hear it played at sporting events. So Eminem Show was definitely a successful album. It was also very controversial as well. The song about his mother cleaning out my closet. There was definitely some controversial things here, but it definitely sounded more mature and more grown up than Marshall Mathers LP were. Some of the stuff that Eminem did with Dr. Dre in 1999 going into 2000, some of it sounded a little bit forced. Like it seemed like, Eminem was trying to be controversial just to be, different and just to get attention. But I feel like with Eminem Show, it was more of himself, and it was a great setup for the 8 Mile soundtrack. All right, so next up I want to talk about the 8 Mile soundtrack. It came out in the fall of 2002. So yeah, I didn't realize until recently just how special of a year 2002 was for Eminem. I think this is probably one of the best years anyone's ever had in the history of hip hop. Tupac had a great 96, releasing 2 great albums. DMX released those back-to-back albums in 1998. But with 2002 and Eminem, I mean, he's got to be very proud of that year. That things really turned around from him financially that year. He must have made a lot of money when, because Eminem Show, I think it almost went diamond. Then the 8 Mile soundtrack came out. And then he signed 50 Cent to Shady Records. So, the money must have just been pouring in over those couple of years from 2002 all the way up until Eminem's next album. But yeah, with the 8 Mile soundtrack, it's definitely considered one of the best soundtracks in hip hop history. It's definitely up there. I've always been very partial to the Above the Rim soundtrack because it came out during the Death Row heyday. So it definitely has that West Coast, signature sound to it. But, the 8 Mile soundtrack, Eminem was great. The movie was really good. I thought he did a fantastic job. I thought it was a great story. He really was able to, tell the world his story and his past, everything he had to go through, encountering racism, encountering, all the stuff he went through with his mother. And, you just really, grew to respect, him after you saw what type of, life he had. But yeah, man, the 8 Mile soundtrack, it started off with a bang. That the Lose Yourself song about, you got to be in the moment when you're up there trying to, win a battle. you only get one shot to blow. I mean, the song definitely holds up, and in many ways, it's still probably Eminem's best song, most famous song. He just performed that song back at the Academy Awards this past year. Also, you had the song "Rabbit Run," which is another great underrated Eminem song. So Eminem really captured the hunger in a lot of the songs that he participated in on that soundtrack. And, the soundtrack really got you ready for the 50 Cent album. He actually took some of, the songs from the 50 Cent mixtapes and actually officially put them on the album so everyone could hear it. So, yeah, the 8 Mile soundtrack, it's definitely probably one of the best things Eminem's ever released. Next up, we get to Encore. This was released in November of 2004, and it's definitely one of Eminem's worst albums. He finally, dropped a bad album, and I just think at the time, the money, crept in. Let's face it, he made a lot of money signing 50 Cent. 8 Mile was very successful. He just came off of, his first 3 albums probably sold almost 25 million copies. I mean, it's tough. I think Eminem is the type of rapper where he needs to be hungry, get pissed off, be motivated. It's tough to get those creative juices flowing when life is good, when you can relax. You don't have to really worry about this, worry about that. And I just think, from a creative standpoint, he had a tough time, delivering, a great 4th album. And I was kind of baffled that Dre let Eminem release an album that was this bad. I just think at the time, you knew Eminem was going to sell so well that, Dre's always been very, he's been the type of guy that's been very, picky about releasing stuff. Like if his heart isn't in it, then he wouldn't release it. But, Eminem was such, it was going to sell no matter what. So, and even he stated on his last album, Music to Be Murdered By, he said, I could release a bad album and it still sell about 4 million copies. So it still sold very well. I mean, you look at what Encore did financially, it pretty much sold as well as, a Doggy Style, when you compare the record sales. But, when I look back to Encore, I wouldn't say it's Eminem's worst album. It definitely started off pretty good. The first 5 tracks, you had Evil Deeds, you had the song with 50 Cent, you had Yellow Brick Road, you had Toy Soldiers. So those first 5 tracks were really good. Featured Yellow Brick Road, featured some of Eminem's best storytelling, growing up in Detroit, how, he was trying to be like they were wearing these, back in the early 90s, that was during like the pro-black era. So Eminem and his friend were like wearing X-Clan shirts, and they were being made fun of because, you're not supposed to be wearing that because you're not even half black. So, and then he talked about how he had a falling out with a black girlfriend, and I think he made a diss song, and he apologized for singling out a whole race. So, you had some honest storytelling songs. Toy Soldiers was another song talking about all the battles and all the beefs that were going on in hip hop. About Eminem even came clean and said, this is not why I got into it. So that was another great song. So the beginning definitely had some good songs. I just felt like with the singles, he was just going for the same shit. The first single was called Just Lose It, and I felt like that was kind of a watered down version of Without Me. It was kind of like the same stuff, and there was even tracks where he was going at Pee Wee Herman, Michael Jackson, Christopher Reeve. He was making fun of all these guys. He even had this is when he started doing the accent. So he must have started taking drugs like halfway through this album. The song Ass Like That, he started rapping like he was Indian, and it was pretty fun. Like if you're in the mood for it, it's actually pretty entertaining, pretty funny. The closeout song with Dr. Dre and 50 Cent was actually a quality song. So it's an inconsistent album, not a bad album. I would say like after track 10, there's just a couple of tracks that are just like, what the fuck was he thinking? I think Big Weenie, even Just Lose It is kind of a comical song, and there's just so many lines that you just kind of regret that he even did. So, there was definitely some laughable stuff on here. So it's definitely one of his worst albums. But, the beginning of the album, there's some quality stuff there. So that was Encore 2004. Okay, so next up is actually Relapse. I believe Relapse came out around the spring, maybe May of 2009. And yeah, I mean, it was Eminem's first album in almost 5 years. I remember I had when the first time I met my stepmother, we were actually talking, and she mentioned, what happened to Eminem? How come you don't hear from him anymore? And I was just like, I don't know. Maybe he just has enough money where he doesn't have to rap anymore. But little did we know, he had a major drug problem. Apparently he put on a lot of weight, was taking all types of prescription drugs. And yeah, so that led to the eventual release of Relapse, which was it wasn't the return that a lot of Eminem fans wanted. The reviews were very mixed. I would say this. I would say that Relapse is probably Eminem's most hated on album by the non-hip hop fans. That's what it seems like to me. But for me, I actually like Relapse. I think it's unique. I think the album definitely has its own identity. One of the things you notice about it, it was almost, the whole thing was almost done by Dr. Dre. And it feels like to me that these were a lot of the initial beats that were supposed to be on Detox, but Dre was never happy with Detox. So, throwaway beats for a Dr. Dre album are still great beats. So I feel like Relapse had some of the best production that Eminem has ever, rapped over. All right, so this whole thing about the accent, there's the 3 a.m. song, the first single, he was supposed to be a serial killer. So he kind of, I think when you look at this album, he's kind of playing like an alter ego, and the accent is not as bad as the Indian guy he was acting like on Encore in the Ass Like That video. It's not as annoying as that, but he was definitely rapping with with this kind of, I don't know. I don't know what type of accent you could classify it as, but I know it pissed a lot of people off. I remember the Misanthropic one. He absolutely hated it. But yeah, Relapse had some really, dope production. This felt like vintage Dr. Dre production. The song about his stepdad was kind of sick, but that beat was just menacing and just wicked. Yeah, 3 a.m. was definitely a dope song. The song about his mother with My Mom, what's it called? My Mom. About how much, the reason he's on drugs is because my mom was on drugs, stuff like, they basically talks a lot of songs about the drug use, a lot of depressing songs, but a lot of really, really good stuff, man. Beautiful, Deja Vu. These were some of the most personal songs that Eminem has done. He talked about how Haley was getting scared when I think Eminem definitely had an overdose. Beautiful was definitely another dope song, he really went into depth about how much of a struggle it was just to pick up the pen and start writing again. But yeah, man, Relapse definitely had its ups and downs. There was some really, I mean, there were songs, especially that Jessica Simpson song. There were certain songs where the accent just got really annoying, but at the same time, there's some really dope production here, and there's a lot of songs where the accent, the storyline and the alter ego that he was playing, there was just some really, really good stuff on here, man. And they closed it out with that Underground song where he took away the accent and just rapped his ass off. The hook was kind of corny, but Underground was a dope way to close out Relapse. So yeah, Relapse is more of a hip hop album. This is a Dr. Dre produced album with great production, and the accent with him playing this serial killer. I think it worked. I really do. I don't think it was as bad as a lot of people said that it was. So that was Relapse. All right, so next up, you have Recovery. This came out in June 2010. So I think Eminem, when you listen to Relapse, you knew that it was supposed to be 2 CDs. So, the first CD was Relapse, and he even stated, this was, Encore was when he was on drugs, Relapse when he was flushing them out. And now, finally, here is the Recovery. And I'll tell you what, Recovery is an interesting album. It was kind of like Fool's Gold. I think when everyone first heard it, the lyrics were so convincing. Eminem was he sounded good. The first half of this album is really good. He sounded rejuvenated. He sounded healthy. He looked good too. Like he actually lost a lot of weight. He looked like he had been, training in the gym. apparently, he had to lose a lot of weight to, look good for the promotional for, Relapse and Recovery. But, like I say, man, it was fool's gold because I just think Recovery, especially like for hip hop fans, it was not as good as Relapse. This was like the start of Eminem really branching out, and Recovery really. It seems to me like probably besides the Eminem Show, like the non-hip hop fans hold this in high regard. Like I think this is one of Eminem's worst albums, but it seems to me like most a lot of people think this is his best. I just feel like with this album right here, he kind of changed his flow up. He really did. I think it all started with that Drake song. There was like a Drake song where he had Kanye West, Lil Wayne, and then Eminem had the last verse, and a lot of people thought Eminem stole the show, but he kind of changed his flow up. It was kind of like that yelling, screaming, angry, kind of tone. It wasn't that lyrical, sharp Eminem from Marshall Mathers LP, and that kind of carried over into Recovery. And I just feel like the production on this album was just, it just went away from the traditional hip hop sound. There's a lot of guitar riffs, a lot of R&B hooks, a lot of just, a lot of this stuff would just appeal to a rock and roll fan, women that just like pop. I think Recovery definitely, it fits the theme of appealing to, the average typical white, female. It really does, especially the second half of the album. But there's still a lot of good songs on here. You remember they used that Not Afraid song for the LeBron Decision. That was like the theme song for LeBron's Decision. I'm Not Afraid. And, there was some really good stuff on here. The album got off to a great start. The Talking to Myself song, Eminem sounded great, rejuvenated. And then he had that follow-up track, I'm on Fire, which was just a lyrical assault. And yeah, I mean, Going Through Changes was definitely a revealing song, very personal. I really liked it. He kind of, some of those good songs from Relapse, he kind of explained himself on a track like that. So yeah, I thought the first half was good. The second half, I just never found myself going back to it. I was just never really into it. The Lil Wayne song I thought was kind of overrated. Lil Wayne kind of took Eminem's spot during his hiatus. But Recovery to me, it's one of his worst albums, but I could understand it. I could understand why a lot of people like it. Like my brother loves Recovery, but my brother is a rock and roll guy. He's a metal guy. He's a rock guy. He has his own band. He's not a hip hop guy. So I can understand it. Guys like him would like Recovery a lot more than me. I think a lot of the rap fans, the fans that love West Coast hip hop, and I think a lot of us, when you look back on it, Relapse was definitely the better album in retrospect. But yeah, so that was Recovery. Next up is actually the Eminem and Royce da 5'9" collaborative Bad Meets Evil album. This came out in 2011. And, to be completely honest with you, I slept on this album at the time. I bought it a couple years ago, only gave it a few listens, but just listening to this, I just think the timing was kind of weird. I just felt like this should have been done a little bit earlier in Eminem's career, even if they had done this in the last couple of years. I just like their chemistry recently just a lot better. At this time, it was kind of weird. Eminem was just coming off Recovery. He looked a lot better, felt a lot better. I think he wanted to continue the momentum, and he wanted to help Royce out. He wanted Royce to really grow in popularity. So I felt like this album, it just should have been more of an I just think a lot of the fans wanted it to be more of an underground effort with more simple beats and just, both of them just rhyming their asses off. I just felt like the production was too noisy. It just, when you listen to this, it didn't seem like Royce is as comfortable and as good as he is right now. I just felt like some of the more recent Eminem and Royce collaborations just felt a lot better than this. I don't know, man. And some of the some of the songs just felt way too like poppy for an album that should have been just raw and just, just more of a street album. Because when you think of Bad Meets Evil, you think of like a lyrical sparring session from the Slim Shady LP. But, Royce, you could argue that Royce actually, stole the show on that track with Eminem back in on the Slim Shady LP. But yeah, I would love for them to do, another one down the road. I think that'd be amazing. They still work together. They're still really good friends. They've been on each other's albums, and I just prefer the more recent stuff from them. I just don't think the Recovery Eminem compared with the Royce earlier in the decade was the best combination. All right, so next up we have the Marshall Mathers LP2. This was released in the fall of 2013, and I actually like this album. I got a little bit of problem. My issue with it is I just felt like the problem is the title. I just felt like if Eminem was going to call his Marshall Mathers LP2, it should have been more of a tribute to the original album. The first Marshall Mathers LP, it was strictly a hip hop album. There's very little hooks. It was more of a rap album. This one, they got Rick Rubin to help produce it. There was just a lot of rock samples. There was too many female features. I just felt like it went away from the theme a little bit. And but overall, I still think this is one of Eminem's better albums. I love the opening track. It's actually called Bad Guy. It's a sequel to Stan. I believe it's actually Stan's brother tries to kill Eminem by, kidnapping him, putting him in the back of the trunk and trying to drown him, just like Eminem did with Kim on the Slim Shady LP. But, it was really creative, too, because as Eminem is drowning, I believe he wakes up from a dream and he realizes that it's himself that he has to deal with. Like the battle is between him and himself of trying to live up to expectations. So I thought that was a really creative twist. The sequel to Stan, that is an awesome song. I love the way he raps on it. It's a great beat. I even think the female hook sounds really, really good there. Rap God is actually another great song where Eminem just raps his ass off. I love the beat there. So, the album definitely does have a lot of highlights. Also, you got Headlights, which is the song to his mother about how, when he looks back on everything, he realizes a lot of it wasn't her fault. So you hear a lot of maturity, a lot of growth there. My brother loves that song. I'll tell you, when I actually forgot to back this up, so I had to burn it on his laptop. And I saw like he played this track like 26 times. So obviously the song meant a lot to him about his mother. It was really emotional. And, they were kind of burying the hatchet there. So yeah, obviously that track had a deep effect on people. But, you have songs like Monster with Rihanna, the Legacy track. The hooks there just sounded way too poppy for an Eminem album. A lot of the rock samples actually worked well, though. I thought Rick Rubin and Eminem worked well here. I think this should have been it. There was no way they could have, topped this album. But yeah, a lot of the rock samples were really good. And Eminem, he picked up his flow a little bit here. He rapped a lot faster, more aggressive. There wasn't as much yelling and screaming. There were some bad songs here. But overall, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. It definitely had like a Beastie Boys type of feel to it with some of the Rick Rubin tracks. So yeah, Marshall Mathers LP2, still a pretty dope album. Okay, so next up we have Revival. All right, this is the one we've all been waiting for. And yeah, Eminem, he took him a long time to come out with an album. And I just get the feeling that he was having a tough time, being creative. I think when you hear the first couple of bars to Walk on Water, it's just you almost got the feeling like Eminem knew the album was gonna suck. I think the first line was like, "Why are expectations so high?" That's how he kind of started it off. And I've never seen anything like this. And honestly, this might have been one of the worst albums I've ever purchased. I try not to buy bad albums, but with this one, there was just, no way around it, man. People were trashing this album before they even heard it because of the playlist, the feature list. It just seemed to me like, so much time it went by that the people that were invested with Eminem, the marketing, the companies, they kind of dictated, what kind of album they wanted from Eminem, and Eminem just kind of went along with the ride. They had him work with Beyonce, all these pop singers. Rick Rubin actually came back and did most of the production, which was a mistake. What worked on the Marshall Mathers LP 2 just did not work on this album. And the funny thing about it is, like, he picked like the worst songs to start off the album. The last couple songs on the album, especially Castle, which is like an updated song to Haley as Haley has grown up now, was a really dope song. But those songs kind of went under the radar because the album got off to such a rocky start, such a bad start. Just a lot of like cheeseball hooks, like, and Eminem was the worst part of this album. Like, he just didn't sound good. You heard everything. Maybe he sounded constipated. He was trying to use all these different flows. It just didn't work. And it's not like the production was horrible. The hooks, we could go on and on about the hooks, which is always a big problem with Eminem albums. But it just sounded like such a pop album that it was just a smack in the face to all the fans that were anxiously awaiting another album. It really did. And like I was saying about the production, like the Chloroseptic beat, like when you hear the remix, you realize, oh man, this is really a dope beat. But when you first hear Chloroseptic, the original version, like, it didn't grab you, and so that has to do with the MC. Eminem just didn't bring it for a lot of these songs. Also, a lot of the songs very political, talking about Trump, which got a lot of criticism, talking about how blacks have been treated unfairly, police brutality. So a lot of the intentions were good. The Trump stuff is not why people didn't like the album. I just feel like a lot of people look to Eminem not to be a political figure. A lot of his political stuff, from the Eminem Show, it didn't sound as forced. It sounded a lot more confident and intelligent. The Trump stuff, it wasn't awful. He's entitled to his opinion, and you could tell that he doesn't really like Trump. But the whole thing. I don't think that's exactly what divided the fan base in half, and I don't think the fan base really cares what he thinks about Trump. It's just not what you really want from Eminem, those type of tracks. So yeah, the album definitely had a little bit of moments though towards the end. I would say that the last couple of songs at the end were good, including Castle. Castle was a pretty dope song. Framed sounds like an updated version of Relapse. It sounds like he was playing that character from Relapse without the accent. So that wasn't a bad track there. But yeah, the hooks just sounded so poppy and so radio friendly that it just, it's just an album I'd never want to go back to again. I think a lot of people feel the same way. And like I said, I've never seen... And this is the power of YouTube and the reviewers on social media. Needle Drop trashed this album, Dead in Hip Hop. I remember Mike Seatown said, "This is just not good. This is awful." So everybody, most of the fans that love rap hated this album, but I think everyone knew that this wasn't really Eminem. You knew Eminem was going to come back hard. You knew, like, this is what he needed. He needed this shot of life, and this showed you how powerful YouTube could be. It's more powerful than The Source, more powerful than Rolling Stone. I've never seen an artist take this kind of criticism, come back with the sort of anger and fuel to just set the world on fire. And when that Chloroseptic remix, man, that verse. It's just insane. Even people within Eminem's own group, Joe Budden, dissed him. Said, this is the most fucked up album cover ever. This song, Walk on Water, is trash. But Eminem came back and just shut everybody up. I mean, he came back with, arguably one of the most ferocious and vicious and inspiring verses ever. I mean, that verse just gives you energy. He's just spitting his ass off. Time to eat the vocals and shit out Pro Tools. Stuff. I mean, Bin Laden with a pen. I mean, there's so many fucking dope lines on that song. So that's one of my favorite Eminem moments ever. And what Revival did, it awoken the beast. It awoken the assassin. He came back with the Chloroseptic remix. He did a great song with Royce da 5'9" to jump off the Book of Ryan album, and it set the stage for Kamikaze. Okay, so next up we got Kamikaze. So Eminem drops a surprise album on August 31st, 2018. You knew Eminem was going to come back. I think Revival was supposed to be his last album, but because of the harsh criticism, obviously, he wasn't that wasn't going to sit well with anybody. So I didn't expect Eminem to come out so soon, though. When he came out, I was like, man, this is going to be good. And yeah, Kamikaze. Here's the positives. It was a lyrical assault. This was an all-out verbal, lyrical warfare. Eminem was pissed. He was going to let out all his frustration here. Now, the other thing is, it's kind of like he goes one way and then he gives you what you want for Kamikaze, but you still heard a lot of criticism, though. You heard a criticism that it was too rapidy rap for some people. And yeah, I would say this. I think the people that loved Revival, I'm sure, Eminem could, Eminem has a certain amount of fans out there that are going to like anything that he does. But I would say that, when I was in high school, there was a lot of girls that like Eminem. Those girls, they grow up to become teachers. They have families. Revival was for them. I could see those types of girls when they grow up more mature. Revival is probably that type of album. But however, they're like, I could see, an adult woman that has kids. There's no way they're going to be able to listen to an album like Kamikaze. I think it was too hard for fans like that. So some of the criticism was that it was too rapidy rap, but for me, I loved it. It's what I needed. It was great music to lift weights to, and to get me ready to do drills and stuff like that. So I loved Kamikaze. I thought the beats weren't like flashy. This wasn't the best production Eminem rapped over, but it was simple. It was fast paced beats where he could just rap his ass off to, and it wasn't just battle raps. Obviously, he attacked a lot of the mumble rappers that dissed him, and it seemed to me like Revival, like the people that trashed it the most were like this new generation of hip hop fans, like fans of mumble rap, fans of the new era of hip hop. But at the same time, Revival didn't satisfy old school rap fans either. So, but then he went at Machine Gun Kelly, Joe Budden, a whole bunch of guys, and the Kamikaze thing. It started the war with Machine Gun Kelly. And, the Machine Gun Kelly disc wasn't bad, for him. I never really heard him rap before, but, I thought he had some really good lines in there. So that was a pretty entertaining beef. And then Eminem came back with Kill Shot and just, destroyed him. I love that line where he said, "You would suck a dick just to be me for a second." But, that actually wasn't officially on Kamikaze. I wish it had been. But, Kamikaze, it wasn't just, battle rap songs, though. The song about D12 and how the D12 kind of went down the... it kind of fell apart after Proof died, and Eminem was very regretful in that song. Talked about how he wished he could have done more and made more connections to get guys more features. So that's definitely a good song. I think anyone that's ever been part of a band or part of a music group could definitely relate to that. I thought the hook was good. It was a nice little feel good song there. So Kamikaze, I had it as the second best album of 2018, but it just seemed like when it came down to, putting out a list for the best of the decade, and, it was just one of those albums. It was cool when it came out, but I don't think a lot of people really went back to it. Definitely not one of Eminem's best albums, but it was just a nice little shot of adrenaline. It really made up for the, the disappointment that a lot of the fans had for Revival. So that was, Kamikaze. All right, so the final album we got is Eminem's Music to Be Murdered By. This dropped in January of the awful year that is 2020. And Music to Be Murdered By, I gotta say, I've been listening to this album, these last couple of weeks. I've only been focusing on this album. And I have to say, man, it's good. It really is good. I mean, it doesn't bore me at all. I can listen to this thing all the way through. It does have its flaws, though. And it's really a lot better than I expected. Dead End Hip Hop, Needle Drop, a lot of the guys on YouTube did not like this as much as I did. And I understand why. But, some of the complaints with Kamikaze was that he kind of sounded, it was too rapidy rap for some people, and maybe he sounded a little bit too bitter. But I feel like with this album, he was able to, he was able to do it. He was able to satisfy multiple fan bases, but still make a really, really good album. I think specifically with this album, Revival really failed to capture, the younger hip hop audience, the mumble rap fans, the fans of, the new generation style of rap, swag rap, whatever you want to call it. I felt like he did that with a lot of these songs, and he had like a lot of the, new hip hop, guests and features on some of these tracks. And I actually thought they were really good. I think the Godzilla track, the video, when you watch that video, it came out really good. A lot of great special effects, just a lot, it was just a fun video, man. So I really thought Eminem really did a good job of, catering to the younger hip hop audience here. But still, from a lyrical standpoint, like he sounded great. He sounded engaging. It didn't sound, one of the things Eminem said about Revival, like when I try to do something different and actually try to say something meaningful, people don't like it. I felt like with Revival though, it just something about it just felt forced. I don't know if it was the production. I don't know if it was the hooks and the features that he had that kind of, maybe if it made him sound drowned out. I don't know what that was about, but I feel like with this album right here, it didn't sound like he was trying to force any messages. It didn't sound like he was bitter or angry at anybody. It just felt like he was spitting and just having fun. There were so many great lines about, about a lot of the rappers that he grew up with. A lot of creative lines. There was a lot of creative themes here. There was a lot of personal themes. There were stories about drug use, about, basically using drug use the same way you would say goodbye to a girl. It even took me a while to get it, but yeah, he's talking about Xanax and, Vicodin and pills flushing down the toilet. He's like, fuck you, bitch. I was like, who's he talking about? But yeah, it was actually drugs. So I thought that was a creative concept. You've heard him touch on the stepdad situation time and time again, but he rehashed it here. I thought it was good, and also you also have the Alfred Hitchcock, the album cover. It's a homage to some of the Alfred Hitchcock movie covers. Music to be Murdered By. It kind of has a. You would think it was more. This would be more of a dark, haunting album, but it really wasn't like that. There's only 2 tracks that really fit that theme. Darkness is one of those tracks. Darkness was a great song. He basically talked about the Las Vegas shooting, when the guy was up in his hotel room and actually shot down a concert from his hotel window. Basically Eminem, told the story from the point of view of the killer, but at the same time, you kind of learn how much, that affected him. Like that could have easily been him performing at the concert. So that was a really, great song, very, very dark, but I thought this is one of Eminem's best songs in a really long time. Darkness, also the Little Engine Go, that kind of tied in the Hitchcock theme too. I think Dre actually did the beat. I think this is the only beat Dre did on the album, and it just felt it just had that haunting, those haunting synthesizers from Dre and Eminem talked about, he actually mentioned OJ, Manson, Sharon Tate, basically talked about how his mind's like a little engine and he's always running. It basically parallels his mind to the mind of like a serial killer about how he could snap at any second, it's kind of, now the one problem with the album is like the hooks, that little engine go, 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 go. A lot of people found the hooks kind of annoying, and I would definitely say so. I think that's the one issue with this album. Also, you had Skylar Grey, you had the hook on No Regrets, you had a lot of pop artist once again. Same problem with Revival with some of the tracks. I just think that girl Skylar Grey, she just doesn't work for hip hop hooks. Lupe actually uses a girl named Nikki Jean, and she just sounds so much better. She's just more soulful. She just she sounds good. Just because it's a female hook singing singing doesn't mean it's a bad hook. But there's a difference between hooks that are good and hooks that aren't good. I don't know. That girl just doesn't work well with Eminem. So I don't know why Eminem keeps using her. But yeah, man, I mean, the album just definitely had some great features. The Royce da 5'9" features were great. Black Thought had a good feature. And, but the Eminem, every single track, from a lyrical standpoint, like, he sounds sharp. There wasn't like one bad verse on this album. Now I know like Needle Drop trashed a lot of the lines, like a lot. I mean, when you're gonna rap this hard at 47 years old, there's gonna be some lines that can't come off kind of cheesy, but I just got the feeling, like, the vibe I got from Eminem, that a lot of these lines were just kind of playful. Like, he was kind of joking with some of these lines. And that's one of the complaints. Like, he was taking himself maybe too seriously with Kamikaze. Like, he sounded like a grouch. He sounded angry. Well, here it's like, he just had like a lot of, maybe they were a little bit cheesy, but I don't think they were really to be taken too seriously. So, yeah, I mean, the Hitchcock theme, he didn't really stay consistent with the theme. This is more of a fun album to me. I mean, Darkness and Little Engine Go, those are kind of like the, Darkness is a really dark track, and Little Engine Go is kind of like a comedy slash, horror, theme song. But other than that, it doesn't really, he doesn't stay consistent with like the Murderous theme. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good tracks here, but some of the hooks that Eminem sang towards the end of the album, I think it was the track Farewell. I really liked the beat. I liked the way he started off the song, but man, that hook just sounded awful. So yeah, that's another one there. So even the Stepdad hook, the Martian hook, those are actually really, really good tracks. But once again, I just felt like, Eminem's never had, I mean, I would say out of all of his albums, like the hooks on here, specifically from Eminem himself, really just kind of held the album back slightly. But I would say this, though, the production and the lyrics are so good, and the features are really good as well. There's just there's a lot of good features on here. And the Slaughterhouse song to end the album was really good. And that hook was actually really good, too. I can't say, I think Eminem made the album he wanted to make. I just think with, he's got, and I know it sounds easier said than done, but, it's not like you can have DJ Premier just come in and do some scratches and say, fuck the hook. I just feel like Shaq, we don't need no hooks. But, part of the thing is you gotta, what do you do for the hook, though? The hook is a big part of the song, especially for Eminem when you got so many people trying to listen to his albums. But yeah, Music to be Murdered by, I say it's still a dope album, though. I think he really, he was able to satisfy the people that hated Revival, and and I think he was also able to satisfy the people that were a little bit critical of him on Kamikaze. So Music to be Murdered by, I would definitely say that, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, and I'm really bad with this. There's so many times where I overrate an album, and maybe a couple years later I would never go back to it. But honestly, guys, like I think Music to be Murdered by, I think it might be Eminem's best work since the Eminem Show. I really think there's a good chance of that. It's more well-rounded than Kamikaze. And I just think it's a better album for hip hop fans than Recovery and Marshall Mathers LP 2. I really think it is. And it takes a shit on Revival. Like when Eminem was trying to do it with Revival, I think the mistake that he made with Revival, I think if he wanted to talk about Trump, he wanted to talk about police brutality, he needed to do it by himself. I think you just had too many fucking people involved with that album that were steering him in all different directions, production-wise and hook-wise. So I would definitely say that. But yeah, man, at 47 years old, Eminem could still spit his ass off. still think he has a lot left in the tank, and I think he has a lot more to offer. I mean, what can he really do at this point? But I liked him do like a Scarface in 1998. He actually did an album called My Homies, where he was on a track with a guest verse or a guest artist on every track. Now with Eminem, I like him to kind of, just work with like stars, like guys that he grew up idolizing, guys like Snoop, guys like Dre, Redman, Tretch from Naughty by Nature. Eminem was a huge fan of Tretch, and I would say that's probably like his biggest influence, Tretch. And, I was a huge Naughty by Nature fan. Those are the guys that got me into hip hop. And I was having a debate with my friend, this guy, a couple months ago. I said, "What do you think about Naughty by Nature?" He's like, "Oh man, you know what? They were too mainstream for me. That hey ho, yeah. I mean, Naughty by Nature released a lot of mainstream songs, OPP, Hip Hop Hooray. But Tretch was a great rapper, man. When he kicked off Yoke to Joker, Eminem even said like he had to like reevaluate his rap career. He was like, oh, like this is so friggin' dope." So definitely Eminem and Tretch. Tretch even said if he ever did a song with Eminem, it'd be the dopest shit ever. They both respect each other. They both like each other. That song needs to happen before they get too old. Tretch is still alive. Why not just do it? But yeah, Eminem and Snoop, Eminem and some of the guys from Wu-Tang, even Eminem and Scarface would be dope. I would just like to see him work with guys that he's never worked with before. Like maybe you could call the album like Hip Hop Legends or something like that. Something with like a Legends title, since My Homies has already been used. But yeah, man, that's Eminem's whole catalog here. So I'm actually gonna upload a top 25 Eminem songs after I upload this video. So before I let you guys go, I'm gonna rank them from worst to best. All right, so Eminem's worst album, I'm gonna say it's Revival. Then I'm gonna say so this is from worst to best. I'll go Revival worst, then I'll go with Encore, then I'll go with Recovery, and then I'll go with all right, so I fucked this up. All right, so Revival, Encore, Recovery. All right, then I'm gonna have to go with Relapse. Then after Relapse, I'm going to go with Marshall Mathers LP 2. Then I'm going to go with Kamikaze, Music to be Murdered by, Eminem Show, Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP 1 from 2000. And that's how I'll end the video. All right, guys, thank you for watching. And shout out to Eminem. And if you haven't heard Music to be Murdered by, definitely check it out. It sucks that it's released in this year, that's 2020, where it's going to get overshadowed by what's going on. But yeah, really dope album. Music to be Murdered by. The only thing that really held it back was, some of the hooks, as a lot of other people have said. But yeah, I mean, lyrically and production wise, it's probably one of Eminem's most fun albums to date.